The federal government promised this week to make changes to the Competition Act to try to increase competition in the food industry and therefore improve affordability. Dany Assaf is a partner in the competition practice at Torys. Dany, great to have you with us.
Amanda, always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
So I think it's important to say that the changes that the government will put into law are ones that have been requested by the competition commissioner himself some time ago. So they're kind of following through on something that he already wanted. But what seems to be key here is one of the tests for mergers. The so-called efficiency test, and will it be good for consumers, I guess, if we can put it bluntly. I have to start by asking you, is the horse out of this barn? I mean, we have a pretty concentrated grocery sector. Are we really worried about mergers at this point?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, Amanda. And this efficiencies defense is actually something I've been intimately involved in 20 years, in my 30 years, and went to the Supreme Court on this efficiencies defense. So it's something I'm very familiar with. And it is a unique provision in the Act that does allow Canadians to ask the question of whether efficiencies are going to make the economy bring more prosperity to the economy than the harm they'll do in a particular market. It's only been used in 2 or 3 cases, so it isn't going to really make a difference with what we're talking about today, which is food inflation and the costs of groceries that Canadians are seeing in their day-to-day life. So it's one of these things they've wanted to kind of fix for a long time in their view, but it ain't going to make a difference on grocery retail prices today. Yeah,
so interesting, right? That this is the catalyst for something that might affect a lot of other mergers and law down the road, but might not make that big a difference here. I have to ask you whether, given everything you've seen in terms of review by the Competition Bureau itself about the food industry and others, whether there's any evidence that a lack of competition is hurting pricing power, or is there competition at the till among grocers?
I think that's what you said at the end is the key question, is at the till. Is do we feel Canadians when you're at the till that somebody has got a hold on the retail market that is really forcing us to pay higher prices because there's no choice amongst retailers? It's a great question, and I think this is why this is such a complex issue. At the end of the day, when we go into the grocery store, we're seeing this inflation playing out on that bill that you get when you walk out and you're reaching into your wallet to pay, to provide for your family. But what is really causing that is unfortunately, is a complex question. And it has to do with, you got to look not only at the retail, you got to look at supply, you got to look at global developments, you got to look at what's happening, with the war in Ukraine, for example, to try to figure that part out. And to try to put it all on the heads of retailers, I think is a little bit misdirected, because I don't think the solution lies on the retail side of things primarily. Okay,
so we don't have enough time to do this next question justice. We're going to talk again about this, Dany. But with this change in the Act on this efficiencies test, is that good or bad? Are we landing in the right place when it comes to competition law in Canada?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I think it's a good question to ask more broadly in very limited cases where you say, yes, it's a very Canadian type of question. Are we going to gain more than we lose overall? And try to figure out whether the economy is going to be more prosperous. But I get it. It's something where people feel there's been too many mergers and they want to put in any tool that will prevent more.
And do you think that will be one of the outcomes here? This will prevent mergers from happening?
I think in certain cases it might, because there is a logic to certain mergers that is driven by efficiencies. And we say that is something that as a country, we welcome. We want to see the economy more efficient here. We know it's going to harm this small group of customers, but we can redress that in another way. So try to use these sharper tools to try to get to make the economy, again, the most prosperous. But I can see in the world we live in today where people are thinking, we just want these kind of more blunt instruments. We think there's too much concentration, and we want to try to make it a little bit harder for people to merge.
Dany, so good to have you. Appreciate your time.
Always a pleasure, Amanda. Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Dany Assaf is a partner in the competition practice at Torys. Time for the takeaway and picking winners and losers. The affordability crisis continues to dominate the list of concerns for most Canadians. Even if you have a house and a job and don't have a near heart attack at the grocery store every week, it's not good for anyone if life starts pricing people out. Some of the problem is straight up inflationary pressure, and a lot of that is global in nature. We don't set the global price for oil, but it's a pretty big cost for a lot of businesses. And extreme weather like droughts and floods will wreak havoc on food prices no matter what we hope for. Other affordability hotspots are very much of our making. Literally, we didn't build enough homes, and we still are not doing so. Though even here, costs to build have been driven higher by some global commodity prices too. So, where to point the finger? This week in Canada, it was at the grocers again. Called to Ottawa to account for their profit again. It's hard to imagine those execs will have a different answer than they had a few months ago, or that it will differ from the Federal Competition Bureau conclusion that they are not in fact profiteering off inflation. Meanwhile, a very different scenario is unfolding for the country's housing developers, who are being rewarded for not building enough homes with a tax break incentive. You might ask why there's such concern for the profitability of one group of for-profit entities, namely developers, and such scathing contempt for the profitability of another, namely grocers. What's weird about that is that home builders have also passed on inflationary costs to buyers, and their profitability is light years better than that of grocers, north of 13%. It's a profit margin a grocer could only dream of. My takeaway? Food and housing are both basic human rights. We've gone down quite a rabbit hole when we seem to expect food sellers to work for free, but are bolstering builder profits with your tax dollars. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.